A belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race.
People to crime.
They're not soft on crime, they're pro-crime. They want crime. They want crime because they want to take over what you got. They want to control what you have. They want reparation because they think the people that do the crime are owed that.
There's no other way to read that sentence, and we've reached out several times to Tuberville's team. There's no other way to read that other than black people want reparations and they do the crime.
Is that what he means by they?
Yeah.
When he keeps
That is
saying
exactly
they want
what-
that or they?
There's only one conversation
exactly
about
what he
reparations,
means.
and it's for descendants.
And crime.
of slaves.
Tommy Tuberville can go to hell.
It's Uncle Ricky from Uncle Ricky's House on YouTube and the podcast version. I think you can catch it on Spotify. Look, we got less than a month before the 2022 election, and this country is about to bust itself at the seams. Both parties, Democrat and Republican, are vying for every vote they can get because, as always, this is the most important election of your lifetime until 2024. But just because it is a often repeated statement, it does not mean that it does not apply, because there are factions in this country that are determined not to enhance the rights and liberties and freedoms for all people equally, but basically to oppress people that don't look like them, oppress people that don't believe in the same Jesus they believe in, oppress people that don't have the kind of money that they have, oppress people that don't come from countries they consider civilized. One of the things that becomes a talking point and has become a major talking point for, let's be honest, the MAGA crowd, the so-called Republicans, is racism. Now, for years, racism has existed in the United States. This has existed ever since the first slave set foot at Jamestown in 1619, because racism is the belief that one group is better than the other simply by virtue of being a certain skin color, or from a certain religion, or being from a certain caste in society, being on a certain level in society. White against black racism has been ingrained, infused, injected into this country since 1619. It was used to uphold slavery. It was used to dumb down the cruelty of slavery, because it automatically deemed that the black slaves that were being brought over from Africa, you didn't have to worry about how they were treated because they weren't human beings. White people were automatically better than they were because they were white. Now this philosophy of superiority, and that's where we get the term white supremacy from, started even before the first settlers came to Jamestown and Plymouth Rock. It started back in the 1500s, in the 1400s, before, when Columbus, we just went through Indigenous Peoples Day, but if you know anything about history, it was originally Columbus Day. Columbus was an asshole, and we got tired of defending him, so changed the name to honor the real founders of America, per se, the original owners. That was the Native Americans, the indigenous people. Now, back to the racism thing. Politicians have tiptoed around racist comments for the most part. You have some outstanding people like former Congressman Steve King, who got his shit balled up into a knot and kicked out. And you have others that, you know, occasionally make missteps and overstep their bounds. But now, since the era of Trump, it seems that there are no more restrictions. I mean, it's almost to the point where, you know, you look for congressmen from certain areas, or, well, Congress people, because a lot of the racists, the open racists, the virulent racists, are white female politicians. You look for them to come out one day in a speech and just say the nigger word. They come close to it, they hint at it. Now, Tommy Tuberville, senator from Alabama, in his last public appearance, basically said that the people that want reparations are the people that are the criminals. And there's only one group in America right now that is actively petitioning for reparations, and they are the descendants of former slaves. So, therefore, if you do the math, which it isn't hard to do, 2 + 2 is still 4, he's talking about black people. He's only like an nth of a degree from just coming out and saying it. He's using fear-mongering to whip up the Republican base, the MAGA crowd, the deplorables, as Hillary Clinton so aptly named them, because their behavior is deplorable. They want to turn this nation into something that perhaps the forefathers that they're always talking about never intended for it to be. From the very concept, there was a question of who should govern, who should run the country. And granted, probably maybe the forefathers thought that it would probably always be a white-run nation, but they did not write that down in stone, so it had to be. They did leave wiggle room for the expansion of the country by the influx of inhabitants. Now we get to the point where, you know, the abolitionist movement, slavery, Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation, black people are free. 14th Amendment, you know, gets ratified, and now black people are citizens, graduated from slaves to 3/5 of a human being, and now they are full-fledged human beings. But this philosophy of racism still existed, and it still exists today. And it's hard to understand why, because the United States is one of the most diversified countries in the world. And contributions to the good have been made by every minority or every ethnic group represented in this country today. Black, white, red, yellow. Somebody has done something from each one of these groups to contribute to the building of America. Even if America didn't contribute to the building of their culture or recognizing their rights as citizens. There are honestly people in this country today that believe that this is a white-run country, and they do everything in their power to make it so. Then when you throw in the MAGA belief that this should be a Christian nation, now we have a formula, a mix, a recipe that the only outcome can be fascism. And one of the tenets of fascism is that the us-them philosophy. In other words, us, the people that are supposed to be in charge, because it is our God-given right. Goes back to the doctrine of discovery, manifest destiny, and all that bullshit. They said white people should be in charge just because, and because this is what was ordained by God. I mean, it's all claptrap drivel, but it has become an operational theory in this country that has caused division amongst the people. It has caused the creation. Well, it caused the creation of slavery. It suborned slavery. It supported slavery all the way up until from 1619 to 1863, when Lincoln freed the slaves. And then after the slaves were freed, racism still caused the oppression of the newly freed slaves. Even as the government tried to give them rights to make them equal to the white citizens, racism became the foundation for domestic terrorist type groups like the Ku Klux Klan, different militia organizations that have evolved into white supremacists, white nationalists. And still, you throw in the religious factor, the so-called Christian banner factor, that, you know, we are the people of God and everybody else must bow down to our God. And in the process of bowing down to our God, you're bowing down to us. That's what that's all about. Certain people want to run shit, and not run it for the good of everybody, just run it for the good of themselves, of their select group, of their chosen people. When the United States is supposed to be for everyone, all people, not just white people. Racism has spread throughout this country. It's no longer a southern thing. You find racism from coast to coast, from Canada to Mexico. Racism exists all over the world, and really, it's a sad thing, but the thing that I'm most concerned about is the racism right here. This election is coming up. It's an opportunity to can this shit. That's it for me. Goodbye, good night. Peace out. Uncle Ricky from Uncle Ricky's house. Bye.